Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Unfiltered. I don't know why I didn't finish. Technology. This is Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters Podcast, where we help the people of Maine better understand what is going on in our state by interviewing people from around the state who have knowledge and expertise or stories to tell from their experiences of being involved in Maine politics. Today, we have with us Sam. Do you go by Samuel or Sam? You got Samuel in there.
If it's a government document, Samuel. If it's a casual conversation, it's usually Sam.
All right. So Sam Bridges, former Maine GOP Vice Chairman. And were you like the youngest Vice Chairman?
If I'm correct, I'm the youngest Maine Republican Party official ever elected. Not necessarily in terms of, the state house, but Republican Party operations outside of that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
within the Maine GOP.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for coming on. Lots of fun stuff going on in Maine politics these days.
One word for it.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So that typically when I have somebody on for the first time, what I like to do is start off by giving you an opportunity to talk about who you are and where you come from and how in the world you ended up, in your case, how in the world you ended up being the vice chairman at such a young age, especially considering, I think you'll agree with me, the Maine GOP in general is mostly geriatric.
Sure.
And so, so maybe you can share, again, where you all your stuff, and then we'll go from there.
Yep. Well, I mean, the biggest thing it comes down to at the core of it is my faith. I'm a born-again Christian. Jesus Christ is at the core of my life. And I was blessed to have the opportunity to go to Bangor Christian for the last 3 years of my high school career. And one of the coolest things about that high school, it's not just the education, it's the roughly every 3 years, and now it seems to be even closer, more and more students are stepping up to fight for conservative principles. Before me, Cody Porter, and then about 3-4 years later, maybe a little longer than that, it would have been about that time frame, I came along, and Cody was crucial in terms of fighting for the Republican Party, fighting for the college Republicans. The college Republicans here in the state of Maine are doing everything they can to rebuild that movement, and they're doing a great job. But during Cody's time, it was the strongest I've ever seen it. And they were able to give me opportunities to work with them. So that was fantastic. And I was blessed to be one of those conservative individuals that came from that Bangor Christian path. It would have been 2020. I would have been a sophomore in high school. I was finishing my sophomore year. Obviously, President Trump was running for re-election. And Vice President Pence came and did a rally at Dysart's there in Herman. That was just about the coolest thing, to be able to see the vice president with my own eyes, see how the event went down. Everything from the security to the people in the crowd to vice president speaking, you couldn't beat it. I loved it. I enjoyed the thrill of the election coming. Some people like the Super Bowl. For me, I'm a geek. I like the election day. That's just how it goes. So I knew from that point on, I wasn't just going to be a Republican and a conservative. I was interested and ready to get active. Fast forward that year and a half, there's rumors of Governor LePage running for a third term. And the rumors became more and more like we knew he was going to run. Sure enough, I talked to my government teacher and my guidance counselor, I was able to get connected with Cody Porter, like I mentioned, terrific guy. And I was able to go down to Governor LePage's kickoff event in, I think it was September of 2021. That's when things started to get serious in terms of me actually being active and affiliated with Republican politics. So here I am, this high school kid who's never done anything politically except for attend a rally. And there we go. I was able to help with that event. It was terrific. Then a few months later, I was able to join on the field staff as a fellow with the state party. A couple months goes by, knocking doors, campaigning for LePage, Poliquin, and the local Republican candidates. I end up being a field organizer for the Piscataquis County area. And then I ended up going back down to a fellow so I could have a little bit more flexibility for college classes. Sadly, the election results in 2022 weren't what we wanted, but we had a really strong team that did absolutely fantastic out in the field, knocking doors, helping staff events, and they gave me a foundation in terms of understanding how to talk to people, how to deal with people, how to, I had a guy, when you've got a guy cussing at you, yelling at you, and then 10 minutes later, he's your best friend. That proves the Republican Party did a fantastic job training some of us on how to handle animosity and try to find unity. And that happened. It was absolutely fantastic. Well, once that election cycle in 2022 wrapped up, I ended up being one of the committee members for Piscataquis County, one of the state committee men. I had one meeting, and then we had another meeting, which was the one where we elect party leadership. And Joel Statkiss was my pick. Terrific guy. He's treated me well. He's trained me well. He's awesome. He got elected, and whether Demi had been reelected, if it had been Joel, anyone, I would have been willing to work with any of them. But I personally didn't like any of the picks for vice chairman. And so I tapped our county chair on the leg and I said, nominate me. And she looks at me like I've got purple skin and 3 heads. I said, seriously, do it. She nominated me, and then someone seconded it. And I got up, gave a speech, and I think, I got over 50% of the vote, but it wasn't enough to actually secure the vote. I think I got a majority the first time around, but it wasn't enough to secure the vote. So some folks dropped out, and I ended up being blessed with the opportunity to win that position. Then since then, I've been able to serve down in Virginia. I've got a heart for both the state of Maine and the state of Virginia. Was able to be Bill Wolf's deputy campaign director. Both Virginia and Maine have very different cultures in terms of day-to-day life, but politically, there's a very similar culture. There's a desperation to have more affordability, to have a political system that actually works for the people, to have a political system that isn't pushing far-left ideologies. But they're not getting that in Richmond, just like we aren't getting that here in Augusta. So got a heart for both states. Obviously, Maine is my home, and so we've got a lot of work to do to make sure we win in 2026. I got a chance back in 2024 to serve with Austin Terrio. Sadly, that election was not the success we wanted, but it was about that close. And now I've had the chance to serve with Bobby Charles. Absolutely terrific guy. Very well-run campaign, and clearly the front runner at the current moment, and I don't see that changing. So that's a long summary from September 2021 to December 2025.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious, like, what it was like. I mean, so you'd only gone to one Maine GOP meeting before you decided that you wanted to be in leadership?
Yes, sir. I think that's the first time I've actually made that public on a large scale. I've talked about it with some people, but I'd only been to one state committee meeting before that.
And even from one state committee meeting, you were like, you know what? This is such a well-run organization. and everybody gets along so well. I think I want to be in leadership.
Getting along so well, let's just say sometimes we need to work on that. I don't know if I should say that publicly, but
I'm already in trouble. It's my fault. You can blame me.
there's definitely work we all could do to work together better.
Yeah.
But there was an opportunity, and I was blessed to have it. It was great. You know, Joel, as chairman, he did a fantastic job in terms of fundraising. He gets a lot of flack. He did a fantastic job. He did a great job leading the party, bringing in smaller donations. I had the perfect opportunity, especially during, 2023, to go around to different county meetings. Some of those county committees treated me really well, and it was a blessing. You mentioned that the average age is quite a bit older. Usually, not always, but usually within the Republican Party circle. Folks were blessed to have someone on the younger side. Some questioned if I was serious, but some were just blessed. Aroostook County blessed me. They treated me really well. I got up there, we had a meeting, and it was fantastic. It was absolutely terrific. Hancock County was another county. I showed up to a meeting, and they were excited to see me. Waldo County, another one. And that's nothing to do with me specifically, but when you show up to a meeting that virtually no one knows you personally, and they take you in with open arms, that's a blessing. And there was also an energy within those. I didn't make it to every county, which I wanted to, but it didn't end up happening. But when you walk into a room, people take you in with open arms, and there's a clear energy of those people want to win, and they're sick of what's going on in Augusta. And not all of them were totally defeated after 2022. They recognized, what happened sucked, but we need to get our feet under us and keep going. And that was a big message we had to push during that time too, because there were a lot of folks that were defeated and discouraged. But you look at what happened last year in 24, we lost the House and the Senate by what? 1%, less than 1%, right in there.
We lost the House by about 60. I think it's 61 votes, but under 70 votes. And I think we lost the Senate by a couple thousand if you combine the races together, but really, really close to winning the House and the Senate. And there were a number of other House races that we lost by less than 100 votes. So very close. We got very close, in 2024 to taking. It's crazy to think. Anyway, how much time has passed? But yeah, we came really close.
Right. So, but I'm definitely encouraged. I think there's a lot of potential. Folks were discouraged back in early November of this year. They saw what happened in New Jersey, what happened in New York. It wasn't what we wanted to see. They saw what happened in Virginia. I mentioned that state earlier. Once again, they weren't happy about it. They were discouraged. But you look at what happened down in Tennessee. The media was making it sound like we might lose that congressional seat. That didn't end up happening.
Won by 9%, I think. But it is an area that I think Trump won by 22% or something like that. So, yeah.
There's definitely, we should have won it by larger margins, but we still won it.
Right.
I think that's an issue.
Number one thing is win. So
exactly. I think that's an issue we saw in 2024 where everyone thought, okay, it's a red wave. We've got a guaranteed win in every single state. Well, if you look at some of the swing states we won, we won them, but the margins weren't massive. So step up, be active, and make sure we win. Whether it's this margin or that margin, a win's a win.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things that big takeaways we've talked about here before, but is the Republicans are, we're the low propensity voters now. Essentially, we've got the working class, and the working class is much less likely to show up to vote unless they feel like it's really important, or unless they really believe in the candidate. And this is one of the areas in which we need to, I think, do a better job, and hopefully things like this podcast and other. Other podcasts that are springing up here in Maine. And I think we're, generally speaking, as conservatives, getting better. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're getting better when it comes to social media. It's there's, like I said, there's lots more work that can be done, but we're getting better. And I think we need to do a better job of it's from where I sit, like what gets people out to vote, right, is believing in the candidates that they're voting for. And this is where we saw Trump. We had 10,000 people, I think, across the state or in CD2 that voted for Trump but didn't vote anywhere down the ticket. Trump earned votes that we didn't earn. I think that's kind of the bottom line. We need to do a better job of getting candidates that are going to get out there and earn those votes. And I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody, but like that's just a fact that people didn't see the value and making sure that they voted for these other candidates. And that seems to me to suggest that those are votes we didn't earn that Donald Trump did. Yeah. And so that's where we need to do, I think, a better job. But I mean, it does go to show that the people are there that are really with us if we do a better job of getting in front of them. And it's difficult. Like, again, part of the reason I started this podcast is because the stuff that we're talking about, obviously we've got the Maine Wire, and the Maine Wire is incredible. And then you also have Maine X community on Facebook, and Unquirer on X, pushing really great content out there. But there's not a lot. There wasn't a lot outside of that. The person who kind of trained me in podcasting, he had some stuff that he was doing that was good at the time. So we need to do better, and we need to get better at getting our message out there. And so one of the things historically, the way that you won elections was door to door, and I still think that there's so much value in door to door. We can't think that social media is the answer completely. Is it a piece of the puzzle? Absolutely. Do we need to get out and talk to people and go to doors? Absolutely. Yep. We need to do both, and that's an area where I think, again, the Republican Party hasn't done a great job. And I think we're, like I said, we're getting better. Christina Parker has her podcast. They're regularly trying to push out content, which is great, interviewing some great people. We need more, and we need to, I think part of the purpose of this, so there are candidates out there, like I like interviewing people who are going to run. Like that's one of the things that I want to do. It gives them an opportunity to tell people in their own words, what it is, who they are, and why they're running in a long form interview, to give people a better ability to learn who they are. And so that's a big part of what this podcast exists for, is to help us get that message out there, because the mainstream media is not going to help. They're like, I remember the Press Herald reached out to all the candidates in 2022, and they only wanted answers to 3 questions. And they were all questions that were ones that would be beneficial for Democrats and would hurt Republicans because of the way in which the Press Herald it positions things and their ideology, because they're a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party, as most of the mainstream media, all the mainstream media is here in the state of Maine. And again, the Maine Wire does a great job, but everybody else. And so there really is no great space for people to go. This is one of the challenges in local politics, right? There's no great place for people to go to learn about the candidates that are running in their town. Like the local media is not covering it, and not covering it well if they are covering it. And people aren't paying attention to local media anyway, for the most part. And so we have a real challenge where I think I think Dove Sachs, he's the chair of the Common Sense for Maine PAC, and he's kind of said, like, when you look at things like if you look at what the Democrats are selling versus what the Republicans are selling, we've got there are 3 things to consider. There's product, there's people, and then there's process, we'll say. Right. And so when you look at the Republican Party versus the Democrat Party, we win on the product. What we're selling is actually what's in the best interest of the people. Right. Yep. We win on the people. We have great people, like the representatives that we actually have in Augusta, and the people running, they're really great people. Where we lose is on process. Yep. We're not doing a great job, as good of a job as our competitors, at getting the information. Again, we have that mainstream media giant working against us, but that's why we need to focus more on the grassroots mobilization piece.
Yep. No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, especially with the product side of things. I had a conversation with someone I know. I sent him a list of ideologies that I think would define myself. I said, I'm pro pro-life, pro-God, pro-America, anti-LGBTQ ideologies, pro-low cost of life, pro-Second Amendment. And then after that, I said, come at me. I don't know if I should have put that part, but it's like, I don't understand where that set of ideological standpoints is controversial. You want to protect life. You want the government off your back. You want to be able to afford to live. That's something I mentioned on my social media is as a young person, I'm 21, I'm closer and closer and closer to either getting married or turning 26, which means I'll have to find my own health insurance plan. I'm an epileptic. The medications I need to be able to be a functioning member of society, to just drive my truck, those aren't cheap. Healthcare isn't affordable. The idea of buying a house isn't affordable. Maintaining the truck I drive isn't affordable. Nothing is affordable, and especially here in the state of Maine, the state I love, it's virtually impossible to do it. And so as much as I love this state here, I'm foolish to stay here. It sounds awful, but it's true. But you're 100% right that the process of getting that message out, that list I gave you, and the message of affordability, it's no longer just to adults and seniors, it's to us young folks too. Seniors can't afford to heat their homes, and us young folks can't afford to get a home. That goes hand in hand. I was constantly campaigning to older folks, great people, by the way, especially back in 22. And I'm thinking, wow, a lot of the stuff I was giving to folks that were 60 and above, in a way, indirectly relate to me. I never saw that coming, but I was also 3 years younger at the time. Makes a difference. But we need to make sure we're actually getting that message out. And if that was one fault of the training that we had for that field team at the time, was one of the things we had to do was get a Twitter account. But we weren't required to be on Instagram. We weren't required to be on TikTok. We weren't required to be on YouTube. Do I think we could have wasted a lot of time on social media? Yes. But we should have been posting on more platforms more regularly. We were running a field operation that was a very well-run operation, but it was 2022, not 2005. So
right. Well, it's interesting too, because I ran for the first. I love the conversation about social media because I think it's such an important element. We're obviously on it. If anybody's watching us right now, this is it's social media, right? You may be listening later on, and that's Spotify and Apple or whatever, but the reality is like so much of there's so much potential in social media, but it's also a very complex machine to understand, right? And so I think the first thing that I would advise people to do is reach out. I'd love to talk through what we can do to be effective and get better at doing social media in a way that's going to be effective. But I think one of the elements is to understand that all these social media companies are different. Their algorithms are different. And so some content is going to do really well on Facebook that won't do very well on TikTok, and vice versa. They have different ways in which you can build and grow a following. There are different, there are different types of content that's just going to naturally go viral versus because I post on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X. I think that's all of them. And actually on LinkedIn as well, which is interesting, just for the shorts, they go there. So I post to all of those, and some content will do really, really, really well on TikTok and will do very poorly on Instagram and Facebook or whatever. And all, so it's interesting. We need to get to all these platforms because different people consume information in different places. One of the things that I often say is TikTok and Instagram are valuable for reaching younger people. I get it. TikTok has connections to China. I understand. Don't worry. They've stolen your information already somewhere else anyway. So if that's your biggest concern, you're kind of missing the point anyway. But this is about how do we reach people? And I went door to door here in Westbrook in 2022. I went to almost every door in the district, and I got 32% of the vote. right? The reality is most people aren't home. Most younger people definitely are not going to be home. And if they are home, they're not going to come to the door, right? That's where this is so important and so vital, is we need to get there. And like, we need to not think about it as, well, like, I don't really want to go on TikTok. So if you're going there, like I would suggest going there with a purpose, not to like look at stuff and get distracted, but post and repost and go to particular things and make comments on Republican stuff, because their algorithms like that, right? This helps us, and it helps the message to show up in more people's feeds so that more people can hear that message. And so that, like, and there are a lot of tools out there now. I actually use a tool called Buffer, which allows me, it costs a little bit of money, but it allows me to post to 6 different social medias at the same time. I can schedule them out. So I could have 10 scheduled out into the future, and when I need to go and add one, I can add one. And so there's some features like that will make it a lot easier. Because you also, one of the other things about social media, you don't want to dump like 10 things at the same time. That's not good. Regular content is important if you're trying to build a page. But anyway, we need to get better at this. And hopefully we do as a party. We are. I see it. When I first got into Instagram, there was almost nothing for anything in politics. There was like one other page that I found. And you might have been on there, but I don't know if you got deleted or not. TikTok's really good at deleting people occasionally, but I've gotten banned twice for Muddy Waters. Actually, I'm on my third attempt. And I just got my first warning on that one. So apparently reporting the truth is election interference, they think.
Yeah, no, I mean, you post a video about praying for Charlie Kirk when he was assassinated, and for some reason that gets a community guideline strike. Every other platform I posted it on didn't get one, but that one does.
Yeah. So it's kind of wild, but again, being on these sites allows us to get in front of people who are looking for this information, and they give us the potential to impact people and influence people. So it's not as exciting of a conversation, but it's a space we need to be in. And we're younger people. You're a lot younger than me, but we're still in the party. We're both considered the youth of the party. And so, the reality is, how do we reach people? Will we reach people in large part through social media? And you've been, like I said, you've been one of the regular people. I think you're the bridge is that everywhere you're known as the bridge, or is that
bridge
just
under the bridge _ Sam B
on TikTok or everywhere?
Everywhere.
All right. That's how people can follow you. That'd be great.
Yes,
so it's so interesting, obviously, being involved in politics for such a young age and seeing the view and value and wanting to get involved is very antithetical to most people. Most Republicans in particular, most conservatives, they just want to be left alone. They don't want to be involved. So like what is it that makes you love the process? You seem to love this.
I guess there's, like I mentioned earlier, some folks get excited for the Super Bowl. I got a buddy. He is the biggest, I think it's the Philadelphia Eagles fan. Like, sometimes I'm like, bro, you got to chill out. I don't actually say that, but he's a big fan. For me, that's politics. Whether that's a good thing or not, it's the way it is. There is something about getting involved and fighting to win an election and other things along with that. It's fantastic. I enjoy it. You've got a day in November every 2 years that you've worked your butt off for. There's a sense of accomplishment and a thrill with that challenge. And even within our own party, there's a sense of unity with competition. I'm fighting for Bobby Charles. I'm also fighting for Governor LePage. Governor LePage is backing another candidate. But at the same time, we're still unified on, okay, we've got to get Governor LePage elected. So there's a thrill in that whole world of how do we play our cards and how do we win in November? It's also cool to see the way that things are developing in terms of we all mentioned social media. The governor's race, broadly speaking, especially with Bobby Charles, and there are some other candidates that are doing a good job, but especially with Bobby, the social media game is being executed borderline flawlessly. The way that man and his team have been able to get the social media game going is very impressive. It's no longer just a TV ad posted on Facebook or an occasional Facebook post. There is a constant effort to make sure that Bobby Charles' name is out there. People know who he is, what he's fighting for. Maine first, not Somalia first. There are so many things that have been done with that campaign specifically. It's impressive, and it shows that people have woken up to all the things we've discussed specifically with social media that presented issues last election cycle, the cycle before, and the cycle before that. I mean, you look, Obama was one of the first candidates to really take advantage of Facebook and Twitter, and it served him well. Why are we waiting 15 years to catch up? That I can't answer that question, but hey, at least we're catching up 15 years later and not 30 years later. There's a lot of things we've been able to do to make the game exciting. And I call it the game because it feels like a sense of competition. But there's also big consequences to that competition. So no shade to a football game, but whether your team loses or wins, that really isn't going to affect your day-to-day life. If with this election cycle, Graham Plattner gets elected to the Senate, but Susan Collins doesn't, that's not a good thing. If Janet Mills gets elected to the Senate and Susan Collins doesn't, that's not a good thing. The governor's side of things, do we really want Jenna Bellows elected? No. I'd much rather have Bobby Charles.
Give me any of the Republican candidates at this point over any of the Democrat candidates. That's the reality. Like, yeah. And that's not a partisan. They're just all terrible policy-wise. We talked about energy yesterday, and I think you kind of mentioned energy and the affordability is probably one of the biggest issues. We had Matt Jacobson earlier this week on to talk about energy policy, and geez, if you haven't, he has a lot to share. We put out a couple shorts so far, and we'll try to get some more. But like energy, if for nothing else, like when it comes to the economic situation here in the state of Maine, if we do not address energy, like, and the only way we can do that is we have to win the House, the Senate, the governor's race. We have to be able to actually make meaningful change there. If we don't, it's going to get more and more unaffordable to live in Maine because of the energy cost, which impacts everything. You ever notice that when gas goes up, for instance, the prices of everything goes up, right? Similarly, when the electricity prices, because of the energy cost, continue to rise, that drives up the cost of everything. And so we absolutely have to win. We cannot have, I mean, there are plenty of other issues to be concerned about, but when you look at all of the people on the other side of the aisle, they're looking to continue the same type of agenda, which is causing people not to be able to afford to buy groceries, is causing people not to be able to afford to pay their electric bill. And if you can't pay your electric bill, you can't live in an apartment, right, or a house, right? You can't survive.
The two biggest things that guide, especially in a state level, where the economy goes, you've got energy and taxes, and both are terrible in this state.
Right.
With federal subsidies and extremely high taxes and other issues, but those are two big ones. Nobody can afford to live. It's almost become a normal thing where I hear people older than me, every single, out of the 21 years of my life, for the years I can think back, everyone that's older than me has a conversation at least once a year of, oh yeah, my taxes went up. And now I'm coming into that side of life. I'm not looking forward to that. But it's become borderline normal. Nobody likes it, but people have learned to accept it. Which, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the late 1700s, we fought a war over a tax, right? So I'm not saying we should go to war, but we have the opportunity to elect candidates that will get rid or at least cut down on the insane amount of taxation and fees coming from Augusta.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we have a good chunk of folks that don't get off the couch and get active. And you're right. People want to be left alone. But sometimes you have to get off the couch to make it so that Augusta will get off your back and leave you alone.
Well, and I think I agree with you wholeheartedly, right? And I think this is the problem. We have to, as I sometimes say, I know that you want to just be left alone, but the Democrats are not going to let you. So we need your help, right? This is the reality. We need their help. We have to think about like how we engage them, though. What's interesting is there's somebody that I know, and he does a lot of stuff right now, but he had never voted until I don't know, 3 or 4 elections ago, and. Wow. Part of the reason, like, he got irritated, anybody was like, "You need to get out and vote." He's like, "Leave me alone. I can do whatever I want." And, it just that tone really annoyed him. But somebody went to him and said, "Hey, it would be really great. It would really help me. I really appreciate it if you would vote for me, right? If you would get out and vote." And so then he started voting, right? And so it's interesting. We need to think about our tactics. Like right now, we're like, "Oh, you idiots! Why don't you get out and vote? You can't complain if you don't vote." Like, I get what's being said there, but we have to think about the psychological impact of what is said. What's interesting is one of the other areas where I think we need to get better as Republicans is thinking about the reality that people make most of their decisions based on emotion, not based on facts and statistics. Okay, it may be true that somebody's life is going to be worse if they don't do everything they can to make sure Republicans get elected. However, for instance, if they volunteer for the party, run for an office, and then don't get any support, they get led to believe that they have a really strong chance of winning if they work hard, and then they run, they don't get any support, and then they get 32% of the vote.
Yeah.
Right? That happened to me. It's very easy for somebody in that situation to be like, "I'm done with them." Right? Even though they still love their state, they want their state to be effective, but they feel lied to, right?
Yeah.
And emotions, not facts and statistics. Like, there's a reason that the party didn't support me, and it was because my race was unwinnable. But they knew that having somebody run that race would divert the Democrat assets, but they weren't. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff there. There's a reason that these things happen, but we need to be better, I think, in general, at thinking about the emotions, which is why people choose to volunteer, why people make sure to show up and vote. The Democrats play this game, and I think that we think we're just going to present facts and statistics, and we need to do that, right? Because we win on that. We actually do. We win people over because we actually have reality on our side. But we have to think about doing that in a way that it touches on people's emotions more than just presenting facts. I used to do a lot of networking for banking, and I could tell people that I could use these detail points about, like, at the time, we could do, I don't work in this industry right now, but we could do certain loans with no loan fees and no appraisal fees and all this other kind of stuff, right? And those are unique things that if you're talking to another person in the industry, they're like, "Oh yeah, oh, that's really great." But if you're talking to the average person, they don't care so much about that. What they care about, right? What one was when you said there was somebody who came to me, they felt hopeless, right? And that there was no path forward, sat down, came up with a strategy, and was able to help them refinance their debt, save them $500 a month. Okay, I feel that, right? That cut 5 years off their mortgage, save $50,000 over the life of the loan. You hear those pieces of information, right? And that hits more people than saying we have better rates, we have this, we have these product details, right? And this is what we end up doing a lot on the Republican side. Where we need to do better at telling stories of the devastating impacts of the Democrat policies and the empowering elements of the Republican Party. So anyway, that's
I agree 100%. I think another thing too is we need to unite the base on the Republican side of things. If you've got two armies coming at each other and you spend your entire time shooting your fellow members on your side, you're going to lose. And if we could take 5 seconds, slow down and say, "Hey, you're backing a different candidate." But I think you were there. It was a month and a half ago when they had the question forum there at the Civic Center with all the gubernatorial candidates.
Yep.
Majority, if not all of them, raised their hand and said, "Hey, I'll back the candidate that wins this primary to make sure we defeat someone like Shanna Bellows or Hannah Pingree." And we as supporters need to lock in with that. Jason Savage actually put a post out on Facebook regarding, hey, you've got opponents, not enemies. There's a select minority that seems to like to yell and scream to make I don't know what they're trying to do. Ideologically, you and I probably agree with them quite a bit. But if you're constantly taking shots at either other candidates or other people or whatever it is, primarily candidates, you're not helping unite the right. You mentioned supporting most any other Republican candidate. As long as one wins, we are in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
We need to unite. We've got a good message, and you're 100% right. We need to tap in and say, hey, what are these people going to relate to? Not just throwing statistics at them. I know he's faded in popularity, and I think rightfully so, but Ben Shapiro's old motto of facts don't care about your feelings. Well, it's good to have a foundation of facts.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to present them in a manner that people are actually going to be receptive to, you're just beating them over the head with a hammer.
Yeah.
So unite the right. Take 5 seconds and say, hey, is this Facebook post actually going to unite us and propel us forward towards a win? And also say, hey, is this post, is this message, is this conversation going to first, you have to analyze who you're talking to and let them speak to you. Let them tell your story. Then analyze, hey, how can I take the message of truth and have it relate to their situation? So I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, well, I think like you make some really good points, and I think that there's an element on the side of the Republican Party in some ways where it feels like we've got to strike a balance, I think, between not being willing to say things that are true and doing things that are detrimental to the party. I think, and to the overall movement, right? So like on the one hand, there are people that are like, if you criticize the party in any way, you're harming the movement, right? And I don't want to do anything to harm the movement. Let's be very clear about that.
Sure.
But at the same time, I do think that there are things that need to be said and should be said that are truths that are harming the movement. We've talked about messaging, and I had a previous thing where I talked about how, and I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that are trying, but like there are a lot of people that refer to the Republican Party as the party of no, right? Well, that tells me that there's something that we're not doing, that we're failing to a degree in our messaging, and we need to get better, right? And so pointing out that reality, I'm not throwing people under the bus. I'm not like condemning our team. I'm saying, hey, here's a real opportunity. This is a reality that exists that we need to do better at, right? Yeah. And until we do, if we're unwilling to hear that, like that shouldn't hurt. That shouldn't cause people to be like, oh, they're just a bunch of like nobody's. Again, the question is this going to help the overall movement? And I'm not perfect. I'm sure I've said things that could be harmful, and I think we all have. But we have to still be willing to speak truths without like doing it in such a way that it's going to hurt us, right? So like if we say, here's a reality that, if you look at the demographics and look how people have competed in the past, it's going to be tough for us to win a statewide election, right? It's just a reality. It's not me being negative. It's not me trying to hurt the party. It's just a reality that this is not going to the data. We have the right policies and we have the right people. We have the right product and we have the right people. But the reality is people don't know that. Yeah. And like the reality of behind why taxes are going up and all these things and how it relates to poor Democrat policies, that's something that we need to figure out how to more effectively get out in front of people. But we also need to project, and I've said this before, but we need to project what we're for, right? And I think much better than we have. We tend to be more in the media, and this is partly the way the media works. They want to see negativity, right? Social media is more likely things are going to go viral if they're seen as being negative, or people don't like them, or angry faces, or whatever. But we need to like do a better job, I think, of projecting what we're for. We're not just against the Democrats. We're also for the nuclear family, for instance. We're for, I like to say, one of my favorites that I'm going to keep saying is that we're the party of empowerment. right? The Democrat Party wants you to be underneath their reign and rule. They want you to need them in order to be able to survive. You need the government. Yeah, they want you to be dependent on the government. So we're actually the party of empowerment. We actually want to set people free from the control, the power and control of the government, and enable them and empower them to be able to be their own people and not have to be reliant and dependent, especially as men. We do believe, as on the Republican side, that men and women are different, and men in particular.
How transphobic of you. I said, how transphobic of you.
Yeah, I know, right? So we believe that men and women are different, and men in particular, it's really challenging for them. What's the term? Dignity. It takes dignity away from men to give things to men. There are times where people are in need and you can't help it, right? But being dependent makes you, as a man, feel like a boy. Or feel insignificant and not feel, and so the more we get people to places where they can live and not need to be under the guise of the government, the better for people. This is better for human flourishing. And so we're the party of empowerment. We actually believe in people, and we believe that they don't need the government to fix their problems, that they are actually capable, if we get the government out of the way, to be able to do it themselves. And they're going to feel better about themselves. They're going to be in a better situation, and our overall society is going to be healthier for it.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I actually haven't heard the quote in a long time, but Republicans being the party of no. I would have been good 2-3 years ago was the first time I heard that. And it's 100% right. But if you can take the no and present it as a yes, and that's not being deceptive, but it's true. If you want to say no to a far left Democrat policy, or even just not necessarily far left, but foolish, let's look at taxes. I want to say no to an increase in my taxes. I want to say no to a new tax. But that is a yes to you and me to having more money in our pockets and to be more affordable. I want to say no to legislation like LD 1619 to defend life. I want to say no to far left legislation and economically irresponsible legislation that will provide protections for life, liberty, and affordability. So if you can say, hey, we're saying no, we're putting up a wall and we're holding the line against insanity. But then don't just leave it at that. I think it's an issue with the Tea Party movement. They got a lot of publicity. They sparked the movement, but they didn't bring in the positivity. We talked about the emotional side of things earlier. They didn't get that. They never brought that in. And they also campaigned like it was 1990 still. It's part of the reason we're stuck in the situation we are now. Yeah. It was 2010, and they were campaigning like it was 1985. So a lot of the things they said were true, but bring in the positive side of it. Say, hey, you're 20. You're getting closer to buying a home. Let's say no to the Democrats. Let's say no to added taxes. Let's try to fight to get rid of the income tax if that's possible. Governor LePage sure got rid of a lot of it. Why should Uncle Sam get more and more of your money? So that's saying no. I don't care what party does it. We'll say no to an increase in your income tax. We'll say no to more property taxes. And then don't forget to add, and that leaves you with more money. That makes you able to have more buying power. That makes you be able to decide if you want to buy a Chevy or a Cadillac. It's a very easy message, and we need to lock in and present the positivity along with the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're pro freedom. I think you're right. Like shifting and saying, no, we're pro this. Like this is the reality. Like you're making it like, are you? They're trying to twist this protecting girls' sports. They're doing the same type of thing, but the other way, right? And they're trying to say that, oh, you're not pro women, you're anti-trans, you're transphobic. And it's like, no, we're pro women. No, that's absolutely what we are. We're pro.
You know what a woman is? That argument drives me up a wall. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. If you say we're anti-woman, but they can't define what a woman is, and I know I'm preaching to the choir probably. You and I both know what a woman is. It's pretty easy to define that. But the folks that are saying we are anti-woman refuse. It's not the fact that they don't know what a woman is. Everyone knows that. They refuse to define what a woman is. It blows me away. Don't even get me started on that.
Yeah, no, it's obvious. It's true. It's simple. It doesn't require any type of degree. Anybody who's is paying attention to anything.
Exactly.
It's so ridiculous. Again, this is our 1984 moment. I think it's one of the biggest ones. Is 2 + 2 = 4. We know that 2 + 2 = 4. But if the party tells you that 2 + 2 = 5, then 2 + 2 = 5. Even though we know that 2 + 2 = 4, right? This is 1984. That's like right out of it, right? And we know what a man is. We know what a woman is. Boys, girls, they're not the same. XX does not equal XY. And like this, I get tired of it, and partly because people get tired of it. I talk about it too much, probably. But it's just, again, the reality is obvious. And the fact that we're having to explain this and trying to have these conversations is just, it's hard. It's hard to maintain your sanity and talk to people who don't believe that at this point. And you sit here, and I'm a Christian as well, and so I look at it, and there's this I think it's either one of the parables or just one of the conversations Jesus is having about having your house built on a foundation on the rock versus having it being built on shifting sand, right? Right. And so if you're building your understanding of the universe from a perspective other than a Judeo-Christian worldview, but particularly here in America, where we have so many people that the secularism is a religion, essentially. It's an atheistic religion. You believe in no God. And if you believe in no God, you essentially come to a place where you don't believe in absolute truth. Except somehow like the ideology of the Democrat Party, which is because people really can't be godless. We were made to serve something, and so people end up serving the party and progression or progress. There we go, right? Which is supposedly the regressive Republican, a Democrat Party thinks it's progressive. I hope I said that right.
I know what you mean.
The party says, yeah.
I mean, I think it ultimately comes down to they know, even if you've never been to a church service, even if you've never been, if you've never had the chance to open a Bible, there's something about that side of things. You hear the name Jesus, and there's something about it. They may not know what it is, but you hear that there's a spiritual power behind it. And that's not a politically popular thing to say, but it's true. And when you ignore that, you're still going to try to fill the Jesus style shaped hole in your life. So you're going to worship self. You're going to be empty there. And that's a big part, I think, why we're starting to see the Islamic takeover here in the nation. They're pushing Islam very heavily. The atheistic, agnostic, self-worship religion that is, taken over the left, especially over the last 30 to 50, maybe even 100 years, especially in the recent 20 years, it hasn't worked. So what are they looking for? The only thing that Jesus could give them, but they'd have to surrender themselves. They don't want that. And it's sad. You look at folks that are amazing people, loving people, nice people. They're so close. The attributes that Jesus would want them to have, but they're empty inside. So for anyone listening, John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. He gave his son. Accept Jesus. He's the solution.
I agree. Yeah. I definitely think that. So I do want to kind of come back though to the secularism piece and the fact that so many people are godless and they build their foundation on sand, and that's how they end up believing things that obviously don't make sense. And Again, not diverting from the reality of Jesus being the answer, by the way. Just for the record, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father except by him. There is no path to God outside of Jesus. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. I'd love to chat with people at any time. But you don't have to agree with me on that to be part of the movement. We are trying to defeat the radical left, and we need all hands on deck. So I think it's difficult, though. It's hard to be in this position where we're trying to have conversations with people who don't have a firm grasp of reality. And this plays out when you get into issues of economics, right? There is this belief. I remember I had a conversation with somebody a number of years back about like healthcare, and they believed. And some people may dispute me on this, and I guess I don't really care that much, but they believed that like healthcare is a human right. And I was like, I would love to live in a world where everybody had healthcare that they needed when they could get it, but it's just not a reality. If you think that healthcare is a quote unquote human right, and that if people aren't always getting it, you're just living in I don't know. I would love to live in the fantasy land that these people live in, because like the reality is not everybody's going to be able to be taken care of the way that they want. Like that's just, we live in a broken world. It's imperfect. But anyway, there's also the reality of trying to figure out, how do you afford to pay for stuff, right? Like you can't bankrupt yourself, which we are largely doing right now, and not have consequences come due down the road. And this is where you see in the state of Maine, we have a bunch of hospitals that are closing. Right. And that's because we can't actually afford to do what we're trying to do right now. And that's so I was having this conversation with this person, and they were like, they were in favor of Obama and Obamacare because healthcare is a human right and we can't afford it. And I was like, but we can't. This is the problem. We can't afford to have a single payer, government funded healthcare system. And like other countries have it, right, quote unquote. But if you hear about the wait times and all the challenges, they don't have to pay for it, quote unquote, but they pay for it another way, right? You pay for it in time, and a lot of people there end up dying before they can get service because it just doesn't work, right? And so, like, you can feel good about yourself and say, we brought it, we made it, and everybody has it, and ignore the reality that it's a broken, flawed system that doesn't actually work. Or you can ignore that reality. You can do whatever you want. But the truth is that people aren't in touch with reality on these things. They also, they think that because I think it's a good idea and it would be great if it existed, therefore, and we live in a democracy, we can make it happen. And it's just, but we actually, again, we live in a finite world with finite resources, and we can't have everything we want. We can't have, as they say, our cake and eat it too. I wish we could, but we just can't. So,
well, you're darn right. And to clarify earlier, you hit the nail on the head. I kind of went off on the faith side of things.
Yeah.
If you're not a born again Christian, if you disagree with me on faith and religion, broadly speaking, you can still be part of the movement. And proof of that, Charlie Kirk actually discussed this. I think it was with Gavin Newsom, and it was quite comical to watch the clip where he says to Gavin Newsom's face, diversity is our strength. And you look on the right side of the aisle, there is much more ideological diversity, even in big players.
Yeah,
I'm not necessarily a big player in Republican politics on the national stage, but you take someone like Scott Presler. If that man comes to your state and starts leading a movement in terms of Republican politics, he's a force to be reckoned with. But he's gay. Okay, I don't agree with that, but we're still fighting for 99% of the same ideological standpoints to make our nation great again and put America first. So we can be part of the same movement. To everything else, you've hit a ton of nails right on the head. You know, I mentioned earlier, you and I were talking about me being an epileptic. Healthcare is not cheap, but the system we have does not work, and neither does government-controlled healthcare. You look at a lot of other nations, take Canada. All of a sudden, physician-assisted suicide is becoming more and more popular. I want my doctor to push solutions, and having the doctor help you kill yourself isn't a solution. Never has been, never will be. And the fact that death at the beginning of life and the end of life is becoming increasingly popular in Western culture is deeply disturbing. You look back not too long ago, we had tiny doctor's offices in households. And then within the last 50 years, all of a sudden the government's tried to help a ton with healthcare. Insurance companies have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we're at the point where Waterville lost a hospital. That shocked me. I did not see that coming. I expected some more rural hospitals. I'm blessed to have a rural hospital not too far from me. Yes, I mentioned epilepsy, but for the type of epilepsy I got, that's not life-threatening. But you look at my family history, heart disease is a massive issue. If there's anything I'll most likely die from at the end of my life, unless there's some serious medical breakthroughs, it will probably be a heart attack at the end of my life. But there's still a risk of it happening from basically age 25 up. With that local hospital, it's almost a guarantee I'll survive it. With that hospital closing, I either have to go a half an hour one way or go all the way to Bangor. My life is at risk if I go into cardiac arrest, and from both sides of my family, there is a serious risk in about 5 to 10 years of that happening. And the older I get, even if I'm a very healthy individual, I could be David Goggins for crying out loud, there's still a high risk. And the more the government has stepped in and the more insurance companies have stepped in over the last 50 years, we went from local little tiny doctor's offices to government-controlled, insurance company-controlled, massive corporate doctor's offices and hospitals. And now we can't get doctors. We can't get good healthcare, broadly speaking. I don't think the government is the solution, but interestingly enough, especially on the left side of the aisle, the government keeps getting pushed as the solution, even though because of government action over the last 50 years, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And earlier we talked about not criticizing the party or criticizing the party. I'm okay with criticizing the party here and there. What I said in my speech to get elected vice chairman, I said word for word, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, take party elections aside, the same logic applies to healthcare. Constantly looking to DC and Augusta and expecting a different result? Yeah, right. I'm a hardcore Republican, but I don't trust either party, quite frankly, to fix the healthcare system.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Well, and that's where the biggest fix is get the government the heck out of the way, right? 90% of our problems, 95% of our problems, in terms of economics and law and order and all this other kind of stuff can be fixed with the government getting out of the way. I do think the church needs a return to being a nation of faith is also a thing that will really help with that process. But getting the government out of the way, I believe, is the solution, right?
Yep.
And with healthcare, like one of the things that people don't realize is that a significant portion of the raises that people would have gotten since Obamacare was put in place has been eaten up by companies needing to spend more and more money on healthcare. It didn't used to be that way. The amount, like a lot of companies were able to completely cover their employees' healthcare, and they've taken on a significant portion of that cost themselves, and they've needed to push more of that cost onto their employees. And so, yeah, I mean, these are some of the realities that people don't really pay attention to. And one of the other things that's interesting, we talked about hospitals, the little places, but also like hospitals themselves. There is a monopoly in hospitals in Maine. I don't know how it is in other states, right? But in Maine, at the very least, there's basically a monopoly. And there's also this ridiculous thing here in the state of Maine called a certificate of need. And in order for a new hospital to open, they have to get approval from a board of people who are currently like in positions of leadership or whatever on one of the existing hospitals. They need to get all of them to agree that this new hospital is needed.
Wow.
So it kind of, again, it's this monopoly, and obviously the talking about the fact that hospitals are closing, one could argue, how can another hospital survive given the problems? And that's really just going at some of the other issues around Maine Care, and the fact that Maine Care doesn't pay what they're supposed to pay, and the fact that there are too many people, too high of a percentage of the population are on those types of healthcare situations versus others. But it's worth noting that there are these monopolies, and it's not good. And the pharmaceuticals, the pharmaceutical companies, the big food, and the insurance companies are leading to, and the failures of the hospitals. The hospitals are scary places right now, is what I've heard from people who work there. It's just, and people who have had to go there. It's just like very, very overwhelmed, and that's a real problem and challenge. So anyway, something that needs to get fixed. So man. Are you going to run for office within the party again, or are you done with that?
I definitely think that there's a potential of either a run for vice chairman or chairman in the future. At the end of this month, I am going to be going to Liberty University. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So I will be back in the state of Virginia, but I'm going to be active on social media, making sure that Bobby Charles is our next governor, make sure that Governor LePage is our next congressman, and making sure that Susan Collins is our next senator. I'm also going to make sure that Chad Perkins gets elected state senator from this area. He's definitely the best pick. He has a 98% CPAC rating. He's one of the most conservative and one of the most effective representatives in Augusta right now. We need to make sure he's our state senator, making sure Representative Jim White gets reelected. So we got a lot of work to do. And that's one of the benefits. So you and I talked about social media quite a bit. I can be halfway across the world, but still be a Maine resident and do everything we can to make sure that 2026 goes the way that, obviously, the way the Lord wills, but pray that it goes, let's just say, in a red and right direction. So in terms of runs for office, once that period of time at Liberty is complete, I'm going for political science. It would not surprise me if I run for even office in Augusta. I mean, by that time, Representative White might want to be, heck, he might be our state senator. He might want to be done. I don't know. I haven't necessarily really talked much about that with him, but heck, I could run for Representative Perkins' spot. It would not surprise me if that came. After the time at Liberty's done, if the party's in a dire spot, okay, say, hey, Joel, show me what you did. I'd be totally open to that. We need to make sure Maine goes in the right direction. And, by that time frame, maybe the bridge with me as the host and hopefully some other people will be a big enough organization. The bridge _Sam B will be a big enough organization, both in the media side of things, to reach enough people. Maybe I won't be directly affiliated with the Republican Party, but just as WABI is an established organization, well, it's been established for years and years on end, but nobody my age watches it. So let's say Muddy Waters, the bridge with Sam Bridges, and a few other organizations, maybe we'll be the established ones, give 5-10 years. So I don't know where I'm going to be. But I mean that seriously, though.
Yeah, we don't know.
The more we work together, the more we build. I didn't know who Chuck Ellis was a year and a half ago. Then I saw your Facebook profile. And then I saw you at Republican events. So Chuck Ellis, in my brain, didn't exist 5 minutes ago, and now I know who he is, and I'm on his podcast. Which seems crazy to say that our social media efforts could be the established form of media in 5 to 10 years, but we're well on that way. So who knows? Maybe we won't necessarily be elected or staff at the Republican Party, but we will sure as heck be doing everything we can to make sure Republican candidates win. I don't see that. I don't see that changing at all. So I will be active in the Republican cause, but it really comes down to whatever the Lord calls me to do at that time.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's great. Well, I appreciate what we definitely love, again, considering how, as I said earlier, geriatric the Republican Party is. It's always exciting to meet some young people who are willing to stand up and give and spend some of the most, I don't know, what do you call it, the prime of your life, as they say, focused on helping the Republican cause. We need more people. We need more young people. And I think, talking to you about I think the issues that are most important to young people, I guess, what would you say are the top issues for people in your generation?
I would say specifically for young men, I can speak for us broadly. I don't necessarily love sticking specifically to libertarianism. I don't think it's a strong political movement. I don't think it gives you any sort of wiggle room. But if there is something that I do like about libertarianism, is the biggest thing is get the government out of my life, get them out of my pocket, get them off my back. And so we have got a generation of people my age and your age, I think broadly speaking, that wants the government out of our lives. But as you and I covered, we need to get active to push them away. So I would say gun rights, stop trying to take my guns, make life affordable, stop pushing the narrative that being a man is toxic. Also, let's make men men again. Let's make men masculine again. Yes, be tough, be strong. But also, don't be a fool. I'm not perfect at this, but not everyone knows this. I talked a lot about my time as vice chairman. I only served just over half a term. The Lord made it clear that I needed to get my walk with him clear and stronger again. At face value, I looked perfect, but no, I wasn't. I was blessed to have the chance to go down to Tennessee and participate in a program called Renew. Now, so people are going to look that up and say, oh, it's a drug addict program. I never had a drug addict issue. Never done a drug in my life. But the goal of that program is to reorient your life and say, hey, come to Jesus. Be in the Word daily. Build your life on the rock and submit to Jesus daily. The sanctification process of constantly, in every moment possible, reorient your life to Jesus. It was a blessing. And so, do I think every guy is going to love Jesus, Jesus, Jesus every 2 seconds being pushed at them? No. But Charlie Kirk did it best, quite frankly. You saw him on stage telling people not to sleep around. Stop being a goofball. Stop getting high every single night. When you're around people, analyze, should you be around these people? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on who they are. And ultimately, come to Jesus. So get the government off our backs, make life affordable, encourage us young men to be actual men, not the disgusting people that we've been conditioned to be over the last 100 years. Those are really successful campaign topics. You tell men that they're not masculine, their masculinity isn't toxic. Tell them to be masculine, be loving, follow the word of God, make life affordable, encourage them to be fathers, be husbands. We're going to see a huge amount of success among young men. I think broadly speaking, affordability is a message, and getting the government off our backs is a successful message for people my age. But being a young man, I can really speak to, I think the last thing, trying to find a specific sect within the Republican Party or the conservative side of the political aisle, it's difficult now. I talked with a friend of mine who is a guy on the right. But if you say you're America first, you fit in with Nick Fuentes. If you say you're MAGA, you're bowing down to Israel. And so I won't lie. As of recent, I'm like, where am I? I wear a 47 hat. I don't hate Israel, but I don't think we should be giving $99 gajillion to them every 2 seconds. But also, Nick Fuentes is incredibly racist. I don't like that guy at all. I don't hate him, but I don't like him. So I am a conservative due to my biblical principles. I want the government off my back. Due to my Christian principles, due to what the Bible tells me to do, I will vote Republican, because out of the two parties, the Republican Party aligns with conservative Christian values. But
most closely aligns, I think we would say.
I was going to say, DC Republicans aren't perfect, but at least you look at the written form of the ideological standpoints that the parties supposedly stand for. There is a clear difference. I mean, just abortion alone should make the difference. LGBTQ ideologies, those two things should make the difference immediately.
You think that it's significant that they had, what did they were giving abortions and giving people the SNP outside the DNC convention in 2024? That's not.
I guess.
And somebody came to there's the whole that person that was at one of Kamala's rallies that said Jesus is the reason for the season or something along those lines, and she's like, you're at the wrong rally. It's like,
I think you look at
difference. Yeah,
you look at how the Democrat Party has branded themselves. They look foolish, and they're trying to repair themselves. Just like we're trying to repair ourselves in terms of social media efforts, they're trying to repair themselves in terms of their image, but they look foolish. Republicans haven't been perfect, and I've been honest about that. I'm very happy with Republicans here at the state level, 99% of the time. In D.C., I haven't been as impressed. But exactly what you just mentioned, having a Planned Parenthood bus outside, are you kidding me? When someone yelled, Jesus Christ is Lord at Obama's rally, do I think they should have done that? It was really tacky and it was rude. I agree with them, Jesus Christ is Lord, but it wasn't the place and it wasn't the presentation. But Obama was very calm and respectful. He was more Christ-like than the dude yelling, Jesus Christ is Lord. But the way Kamala responded really showed where she stood, and the DNC looked foolish. If you've got purple-haired individuals who can't tell what a man is and can't tell what a woman is, yeah, that's not a good sign.
It really isn't. It's no. It's not. It's an easy. It should be an easy decision. I think sometimes Christians, have challenges around immigration, partly because and we could get into this too, but like, there's a difference on how a Christian should treat a person, an individual, how Christians should treat people who are in difficult situations. That's different than how a government should act, right? The government's job is to protect the borders and maintain that. Christians, if we see somebody in need here, we shouldn't ask the question, are they here legally? I don't think that's how that process works. I think if you see somebody who's starving and in need and there's a way to help them, we have to be careful. Obviously, we don't throw money away, but there are things that we can do. I think that there's a place for the church to do some things that are good that way, while also recognizing that when the government comes and grabs that person and maybe they've got to go back to their home country. I think that's a reality, right? And I think Christians struggle with that because it feels unkind. And I think what sometimes they're missing is it's not like let's say again, we don't live in a world where we have unlimited resources, right? We have a country. We have people to take care of. And first and foremost, we've got to take care of our children, the people who are born here, right? We have to take care of them first before we can think about taking care of other people. And if we lived in an infinite universe where we could just be like, oh, great, you can come into the infinite universe, America. We can set up another place for you to have a house, you to have all this stuff, jobs for you to make sure you can provide for your family in a way that it doesn't impact and take away from our citizenry. Sure, why not? Obviously, that would be great. But we don't live in that unicorn universe. We live in reality, and the truth is that for every non-legal citizen that you're keeping here, you're harming our U.S. citizens, making it more difficult for our younger people to be able to afford to buy a home because we've driven up the demand of housing and we don't have enough housing to house the current people who are here, right? And it's because we've brought in millions and millions and millions of people from outside the country, and that's problematic. So anyway, Well, thanks for coming on. Like we could probably go on about that for another 10 minutes. We'll just maybe we'll have you on again and we'll find some more topics. But
Definitely.
thanks so much for coming on, Sam. Yeah, been a great conversation and really excited. Younger people like you being involved in the party, makes me excited for the future of the party. We got to find more. We got to figure out how to get more people doing stuff in social media is one of the ways. And so we'll keep it up. So yeah, and I guess we'll be back on next week. I got a candidate running for House, I think in District 50. It's going to joining us next week. That's in Bath, is my understanding. Jed Rice is looking to run there, so he's going to come on and talk about why he's looking to run. And we'll see you all then.
Fantastic. God bless.